Okay, so now that we've kind of looked at the poetry explication process in general, we're going to go and try to draw from what we know already about the mechanic process and kind of see if we can identify any of those things or major attributes of different sonnets into sonnets that we read. That's the important part because that's what we're going to be doing on exams and anything like that. And we're also going to start looking at more of like the thematic material in each of the sonnets that we talked about. Remember, we talked about Petrarchan and we talked about the Shakespearean sonnet. So here we've got a sonnet, and I'm going to read it to you. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? So right off the bat, you can go ahead and start looking at the meter that you're going to have, and you can also start looking at the rhyme scheme. Here in the meter, I already have some marked for you, but you can see we have a series of unstressed and stressed syllables, and we have 5 stresses, which we already know would make that iambic pentameter. Which, if you remember, is one of the more common types of meter that we're going to see in any of the sonnets, especially, that we look at. And then we can go ahead from there and kind of start looking at the rhyme scheme. Sometimes when you're explicating a poem, it takes rereading it a few times because there's separate things that you're going to be looking for that are going to be important for the whole explication. Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. Now, once you start getting more familiar with reading poems, you can kind of start to tell what kind of poem it's going to be just by looking at the theme once you start reading it and listening to the rhyme scheme. And you'll notice this one has a little bit more of a sing-songy feel to it. And once we look at the rhyme scheme pattern, we'll see that it is indeed a Shakespearean sonnet. It's actually sonnet 18 from William Shakespeare. But we can go ahead and identify the rhyme scheme like we would in an actual poetry explication. So I've already marked the end of each line. So we see that we've got an A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, and then our couplet with G, G. So I've already marked it, but you should go ahead and look at the kind of quatrains you have. We have 3 different quatrains and then a couplet at the end, as we know a Shakespearean sonnet has. In a Shakespearean sonnet, remember we talked about you're going to have those 2 differing ideas, a lot of extended metaphors, well, and comparisons, definitely comparisons. And a lot of times you're going to have the theme of love in them, and it's usually a speaker talking to their love interest, generally. And as we see here in the first 2 quatrains, we see a big comparison being made. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? So right off the bat, this one's really straightforward. You can see what it's being compared to. And we see a lot of metaphors talking about the eye of heaven shines, you know, a metaphor for the sun, or just altogether a big comparison. Now, a lot of times in the Shakespearean sonnet, in the 3rd quatrain, you're going to see kind of a big turn of events or a changing. And when we talk about the Petrarchan sonnet, we'll see that there's something called a volta. And here, that transforms into just one line, where it is in the Petrarchan sonnet, into an entire quatrain sometimes. And here we can see in this 3rd quatrain that not only is she being compared to a summer's day anymore, but she actually is transforming into a summer's day, making this a real metaphor. This is the extended metaphor. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So we can see it's kind of a shift in just a comparison to an actual metaphor. And then the couplet is usually going to be a, the best way to describe it is a commentary on the rest of the poem. It's a change in the mood or the tone. It's not really talking to that reader in a sense anymore, or making that comparison anymore, but it's usually like a direct call. And as we can see, so long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. So it's kind of an entire shift. So overall, those are good things to look for. You need to look for the metaphors, you need to look for any kind of literary devices that might help in an explication, kind of help you explain the theme of the poem. And just kind of remember the different attributes of a Shakespearean sonnet and kind of show in your explication how those are used to bring about the whole theme of the poem. And if you can do that, then it's going to earn you a pretty good grade on your explication.